Hey everyone, I'm an iPhone user. I've used pretty much every generation of the iPhone. My first iPhone was the iPhone 4, and I've basically bought every iPhone brand new since the iPhone 6 came out, so I'm kind of an iPhone fan. And currently, I'm using the iPhone 16 Pro Max. I've been using it since it came out, and I do like this phone a lot. But recently, I got the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, and I wanted to actually give it a shot, give it a go, and see how I feel about this device as a super hardcore iPhone user. So that's what this video is all about. My thoughts on the Galaxy S25 Ultra as an iPhone user. Now look, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not switching to this phone, I haven't ditched my iPhone, I'm not going all in on Samsung, but I have been using this phone here and there over the past few days, and I do have some thoughts about it. Okay, so first up, the design. Now, this phone doesn't look that different from the previous S24 Ultra, but there are some nice improvements here that make this device feel more premium, more substantial, and I just kind of like how it looks. Now this year they've kind of squared off the sides, made it a bit more boxy, and that's kind of the trend with all smartphones these days, but here it just feels really nice and substantial. Now this is a large phone, but it doesn't really feel heavy or anything. It actually feels lighter in my opinion than my 16 Pro Max. Like these two devices are pretty much the exact same size, but my iPhone does like feel ever so slightly heavier. This is a very lightweight device despite being like so big. Now one thing the iPhone definitely doesn't have is the S Pen, which is built into this phone. It's like pushed right to the edge of the device because they've packed so much into this phone. And I've always really been a fan of the S Pen support on Samsung devices. I like being able to like write up a grocery list or draw up a quick idea for like a thumbnail, for example. I really do like having an S Pen on a Samsung phone. Now one thing they have gotten rid of with the S Pen this year is Bluetooth functionality, so it doesn't sound like a big feature, but there are a bunch of things that I do actually remember on previous Samsung phones. For example, my favorite was being able to use the S Pen as a remote camera trigger, which is great because you can activate the camera from a distance and it's basically like an invisible object, so you don't really see it in photos. So I don't know why Samsung got rid of the Bluetooth functionality. It was there last year in pretty much the exact same category of device. It just seems like a weird trade-off. But besides that, the display here is absolutely beautiful. It is a 6.9-inch display that is AMOLED. It's 1440 by 3120 pixels. It also is an adaptive display, so it can go from 1 Hz up to 120 Hz, and it feels very smooth, very fluid, very fast. And it's also incredibly bright too, like up to 2600 nits of peak brightness outdoors, which is crazy. And one of my favorite things here is the anti-reflective coating on the display itself. Like right next to my iPhone, the display here looks a lot darker. You see a lot less reflections of yourself or your surroundings. You don't have to really boost the brightness as much to kind of block out those surroundings when you're watching a video outdoors, for example. So big shout out to Samsung for this feature. Now, obviously across the entire iPhone lineup now, we have no more fingerprint scanners, it's just Face ID, which honestly, I don't mind at all. I have no complaints with Face ID, it works great, but Samsung here does not have Face ID, so it is a little bit to get used to. You have an in-display fingerprint scanner, which in the past, I remember like years ago, were like not very good, but this time it's like no problem at all. Like you turn your phone on, you just tap it with your finger very quickly. I do like the in-display fingerprint scanner. It is something that I wish the iPhone had either in addition to Face ID or just that's all it had for security, so I don't mind that. Okay, now actually turning on the phone, the biggest difference between this device and an iPhone is the software experience. Now, Samsung phones, of course, do run Android. This has Android 15 with One UI 7, and this is the best that One UI has ever looked in my opinion. In the past, I'm sure you remember Samsung's software experience was just so bloated and like just full of stuff, and it was kind of ugly also, but here it's pretty consistent. Like all of the Samsung built-in apps look very consistent, they're very clean, very simple. Different parts of the UI as well are very simple as well. Clean design, I really don't mind it at all here. There's some nice gradients, the font is decent, like Samsung has really polished up the operating system here a lot. Now, if you don't like how the software looks, you can obviously change it. You can change the icons, you can change the wallpaper, the widgets, the way things are laid out. It's very customizable. But like daily interacting with this phone, I don't mind how it looks and how the operating system feels. And there are elements of the software that feel like very similar to iOS. Like for example, there's the live activities feature. We kind of have that here on this device. The other big thing that Samsung is really pushing this year that I won't really talk about too much because I'm sure y'all are incredibly sick about hearing about it. Samsung has AI throughout this phone, built in a bunch of features. In the Photos app, for example, you can do a lot of edits to your photos after you shoot them. There's cleanup features, there's other adjustments you can make that use AI, so there are some AI features built into editing your photos in post. There's also Google Gemini built in, so you just hold the power button in, and you can ask a question like, what's the strongest 3D printer filament?
Determining the strongest 3D printer filament can be complex, as strength can refer to different properties. However, here's a breakdown of some of the strongest and most durable options. Polycarbonate, PC.
Google Gemini is pretty solid, it has a lot of knowledge. It's kind of just like Apple connecting with ChatGPT, but I find here getting an answer is a lot faster than when on Siri you ask a question that doesn't know the answer to, then it connects to ChatGPT, and then it comes back to you with an answer, and it's kind of this whole process. Here it's much more quick, much more instant. And there's kind of this AI summary thing that combines all your notifications, the weather, all stuff you're interested in into one briefing on your lock screen or on your home screen if you have the widget. I think one of the biggest wins for Samsung though, and also most Android phones in general these days, is not something that Google or Samsung has actually even done, it's what Apple has done, enabling RCS messaging support. And this is actually an incredibly big deal because if you message someone who has an Android phone and has RCS enabled on their device or their carrier supports it, you'll still see a green bubble when you text them, but basically now they can reply to your messages, there is read receipts on, so pretty much when you're chatting with an iPhone user with this device, you'll get most of those great iMessage features that you've come to love and expect if you're switching to this phone from an iPhone. So I mean, Apple held out for a very long time, but shout out Apple. I mean, it just makes connecting with an Android user a lot better. Now, this device is a flagship phone and it is incredibly fast. We have the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Elite, we have 12 or 16 gigabytes of RAM, we have 256 gigabytes, 512 gigabytes, or 1 terabyte of storage, which is very fast internal storage, and just daily usage like swiping around, using the phone, even multitasking with split screen, everything feels incredibly fast on this device. You're playing a game, you're going through apps, you're using AI features, everything feels very fast on this phone. You're not gonna have any problems with speed. It's a flagship phone, you're paying a lot for it, and you're gonna get very, very fast performance. iPhone level speed on this device, no problem at all. Moving on, one of the biggest reasons why I stick with an iPhone is because I love the camera experience on iPhones. It's very consistent across all three cameras. Photo quality is great, video quality is great, there's some really good features built into the camera app, and here, the cameras are also really good as well. You're getting a main 200 megapixel camera with an f1.7 aperture, a periscope telephoto camera at 50 megapixels with 5 times optical zoom, you're getting a regular telephoto 10 megapixel camera with optical zoom at 3x, and you're getting an ultra-wide 50 megapixel camera as well. And the camera quality here is actually pretty decent. Here's a couple photo examples compared to my 16 Pro Max. You can see how the main camera performs, how the telephoto camera performs, the ultra-wide, and you can see the differences in quality. Sometimes the iPhone takes a better shot, sometimes the Samsung takes a better shot, but what's great here is that the Samsung phone has so many different physical cameras to rely on. You have 4 different cameras in the back of this device versus just 3 on the iPhone. Now for video quality, I've been a really big fan of how iPhone video looks coming straight to the camera with no edits. I've shot a lot of videos on my channel with my iPhone, and I just think iPhone video is beautiful, smooth, natural, and consistent. But Samsung here has definitely made some improvements. So now you can actually shoot video at 8K up to 30 frames per second, and 4K at 30, 60, and 120 frames per second. You can also shoot log video as well, so you can grade it in post if you want to have that ability. It's great to see here. And you can see the difference in iPhone video versus Samsung video. I mean, they do look quite different, but I'll let you judge for yourself which one you prefer, which one feels more stable, which colors you prefer, which one looks sharper. I'll let you guys decide. So finally, let's talk about the battery life here. We have a 5000 milliamp hour battery inside this phone, which is fast charge capable at 45 watts with wired charging giving you 65% charge in 30 minutes, and wireless charging it supports up to 15 watts, and it is actually Qi 2 ready. But unfortunately, there's no magnets, so if you're like me, you've invested a lot into the MagSafe ecosystem, those accessories are not going to work here. And you can still reverse wireless charge devices as well, so if you have a pair of earbuds or a smartwatch that charges over Qi, you can just place them on the back, and honestly, I would just plug them into this phone because it does have a lot of battery to spare. And reverse wireless charging is only at 4.5 watts, so really not that fast. And the battery capacity here is pretty much the same as the iPhone 16 Pro Max, which I believe is about 4600 milliamp hours, compared to 5000, pretty similar. And both of these phones have great optimization with their processors, so they are going to last quite a while. Now the iPhone always seems to last me a full day of usage. By like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, I have about 10% battery and I start my days at around 6 or 7 a.m. So that's pretty good, that's all I could ask for. Now I have to test out the S25 Ultra more in depth to see how its battery performs over time, but I mean so far from my usage, it definitely lasts a full day, no problem. Any phone that has that much battery capacity is gonna last. Unless you're doing things like a lot of 4K video recording, taking a lot of photos, using Google Maps, 5G, that drains the battery a lot and it definitely affects my iPhone, so I wouldn't expect anything less on this device. Okay, so there you go. Those are my thoughts on the Galaxy S25 Ultra as an iPhone user. Now, I'll be completely honest, this phone is not that exciting. I mean, it's very similar to the S24 Ultra, which was similar to the S23 Ultra. Over the past few years, Samsung hasn't really done that much that is groundbreaking and new and exciting. But that being said, neither has Apple. I mean, the last couple years with the iPhone, they've all been very, very similar. This year, it's been Apple Intelligence that we've had to hear about over the last little while, and it's something I use occasionally, but not that often. Now, you're gonna be leaving behind a lot if you switch to a Samsung phone from an iPhone. You're losing the compatibility with the Apple ecosystem. If you have an Apple laptop, an iPad, an Apple Watch, none of that is really gonna cooperate with this phone. You're also losing iCloud support, you're losing iMessage, there's a lot of software things that Apple really does well that you're gonna be losing when you switch to this device. Now Samsung does of course have a great ecosystem of devices like its smart home devices, its smart watches, audio devices, there's a whole bunch of things part of the Samsung world. But for me, it just doesn't compare to Apple's devices working together so well. But if you're not really locked into the Apple ecosystem, it's very easy to just get out and switch to an Android phone. It's not that bad. But let's just put all of the ecosystem stuff to the side for a second, pretend it doesn't even exist because it's almost unfair. As an iPhone user, a lifelong Apple fan, I don't mind this phone at all. The design is great, it feels very well made and premium, the display is beautiful, the software is much improved versus previous Samsung software experiences, and I do like a lot of the features here that are built in and some that I wish were actually on the iPhone. I also love the S Pen support, being able to take it out, write a quick note, draw something up real quick, and the camera experience, I don't mind it here at all. Like, it doesn't have the Apple kind of photo and video look that I'm used to, but having all these different cameras is great for versatility when shooting. And this phone is of course quite expensive, like it's the same price as the most expensive iPhone, if not slightly more in some cases, maybe slightly less with certain deals or trade-ins, but yeah, I mean, it's very, very similar. So yeah, in summary, as an iPhone user, I don't mind this phone at all. Samsung has done a pretty good job here, and I think if you're like really sick of your iPhone or you have a really old iPhone, you're not like super tuned in with the Apple ecosystem, then why not? S25 Ultra. It's pretty solid. And that's pretty much it. I want to hear your thoughts in the comments down below on the Galaxy S25 Ultra and the S25 lineup in general. If you have an iPhone, would you switch to this phone? What do you like about this phone? What do you hate? Let me know in the comments down below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe, and thank you for watching.